Thank you, Melissa, and welcome everyone. We have a special guest today. It's not very often that I meet somebody that when I take a second look at it, I go, oh my God, this person has done so much in their short time on Earth. And this is one of those special individuals today that you're going to go, oh my God, this is someone that really has done so much for so many and continues to do so. Dr. Dan Arvizu, welcome to our conference. It's such an honor to have you with us today.
It's great to be with you, President Salazar. Real pleasure for me to be here.
You know, I was looking over your bio, and you've done so many things, been recognized by so many different entities, and accomplished so much in your life. You are the very first Hispanic to be the Chancellor and Chief Executive of New Mexico State University System. And you are also a graduate. You did your undergraduate work there before doing your master's and doctoral work at Stanford. Did you ever think, when you were a student, that one day you might come back and actually be in charge of the entire university system? What was it like for you to be a student?
Yeah, a great question, Ignacio, if I may call you that.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. You know, I think, first of all, I keep pinching myself every time I think about the journey that I've been on. When I was a student, I had no clue of what the future held. I had no way of really appreciating or understanding what the possibilities might be for how my life's journey would unfold. And you know, if I can just reminisce a bit, you know, I was raised literally about 60 miles from here, a little town next to Las Cruces here called Alamogordo. And I was actually born on the border of Arizona in Douglas. And my parents moved here to, I think the first place we stayed in New Mexico was Roswell, before taking some time in the Panhandle of Texas and then back to Alamogordo. And you know, I come from humble beginnings. You know, a typical Hispanic family. My dad was born in Chihuahua, in Matachic. There, if people know the Sierra, there in Chihuahua. My mom's family all comes from Hermosillo. And so, you know, that was the Rodriguez side of the family, and my dad was the Arvizu side of the family, and they met. Actually, my dad he was orphaned early. My grandparents died very young, and he literally shined shoes on the border. And every time I go by anybody that's shining shoes, I give them an extra tip. That was the beginnings of my family.
Right.
And you know, he finished third grade. Wasn't really educated in that sense. But always had both a love of country and a love of what, you know, life could, you know, what one could accomplish in their life, and they're very encouraging in a lot of different ways. And so, you know, I'm a son of immigrants, and you know, we were poor. We didn't know we were poor. We always had so many of those family values and things that we all care about. But like, you know, to answer your question, I had no appreciation for the fact that, you know, in fact, I wasn't even sure I was going to college, let alone, you know, being able to progress and ultimately get a PhD and be able to do some of the amazing things that I've had the privilege to do. So I feel like I've come full circle. I feel like I'm coming home after many years of doing a variety of things. And it's an opportunity for me to give back to the institution that started me on my professional career. So we can talk more about some of the specifics, but to me, it's a surreal moment, and I still don't fully appreciate all that's happened and how much we've accomplished.
It's an incredible journey, an incredible story, and one that so many can relate to in terms of your beginning. But where you've landed is a true accomplishment, and it's a testament to, I'm sure, your family and the values within your family and the upbringing you had as a child, you know, being brought up there. You know, the thing today, you know, and you're in higher education.
Yeah.
And, you know, we hear so much about Hispanics and the need to train and educate Hispanics.
Right.
The population is shifting dramatically, you know, in that direction. You know, it's projected that 1 in 3 children between the ages of 3 and 17 will be Hispanic within the next 15 years. Just a tremendous shift in everything demographically. But that also has implication for you know, our economy, for everything that we do as a nation. So as you know, coming from that beginning, you understand the community. You understand the you know, the disadvantages and the advantages you have as an individual. For so many of our youth, they start out at a 2-year institution. And we know that for many of them, this is for a variety of reasons that they go there. However, we also see that while they're at the two institution, they're not graduating in the same percentages as others. And so that's an issue. Within your university system, and the two-year individuals that you received, are there challenges that you have to face as the administrator for the entire system that you have to deal head on?
Certainly, Ignacio. One of the challenges that we have is that we live in a community. The state of New Mexico is actually a very diverse state in many respects, but we're really dominated by what we refer to as underrepresented minorities, primarily Hispanic and the Native American communities, a few other communities as well. And so we serve a very different kind of demographic. And the thing that attracted me, first of all, New Mexico State University system is a land-grant institution. So that means that we have responsibilities for not just the research that we do, but for the communities that we serve, and many of those are across the state. So we have a main campus, and then we have 4 branch campuses which provide 2-year programs that we trust will be helpful in terms of a feeder pool for the 4-year programs on our main campus in Las Cruces. So the system approach is an incredibly valuable tool, especially for the underserved, for those who don't have really either the means or the capabilities or the things to be able to really understand how to engage and actually start the educational journey. As a case in point, I started at the Alamogordo branch of our New Mexico State University system. It was convenient, it was easy, it was something that was more familiar to me than a broader campus. I was the first in my family to go to college. In fact, the first in either of my dad's family or my mom's family, extended family, to get a college degree. There was really not much emphasis put on education, at least back in those days, and so it was a real eye opener for me. I didn't have the counseling, I didn't have much of the things that I think are important to guide a student through that journey. But the branch campuses are extremely valuable. One of the things that we know, and especially now in this post-COVID world, where we're so essentially constrained in being able to do things, in the mode that we've grown accustomed, and specifically the idea of having a digital infrastructure. If we're going to go to classes online and those kinds of things, you need to have access to Wi-Fi. You need a mobile phone, or at least some instrument that you can connect with connectivity, so that you can continue instruction. These are very, very challenging times for so many of us, and in fact, I think especially for the Hispanic community, underserved, I like to say, low income, it's very, very challenging, and they need special attention. 2-year branch colleges are perfect for that kind of a start, especially for those who don't yet know what they want to do, how they want to do it, and to get familiar with the environment. So much of what we need is mentors and role models and people that can advise us. And the branch colleges across our state are quite important in that respect. And so where we have 24,000 students overall in our entire student ecosystem. The majority of those that are here in Las Cruces, because we have one of our big branch campuses right here in Las Cruces, and we actually encourage students to even though it's co-located with our main campus, you get a different kind of instruction at the community colleges. You get a little bit more attention. We like to say we meet students where they are. And these students are going to be from every walk of life. They're going to have serious challenges. We have migrant programs for migrant worker, students that are members of migrant worker families, and we have a variety of ways in which we can help them and support them. Because, again, helping them maneuver through what is a very complex environment if you're not familiar with higher education is a big challenge. And we, as an institution, need to be able to reach down and grab those students wherever they are, meet them where they're at, help them guide them through what their aspirational needs are, as well as their fundamental, rudimentary kinds of classes and courses they need to prepare them for, additional and more education going forward. So the community colleges and the branch campuses is extremely important.
Right, and I think, when you think about the entire, spectrum of education, from the beginning, you recognize that, Hispanic Latinos typically are not in pre-Head Start programs, and yet by the age of 3, The typical, child has heard 30 million fewer words, which is a huge disadvantage when you're beginning your educational system. And you're typically in poor communities which have fewer resources. It's estimated that it's $1,800 per child less if you're in a poor school district, which means that you're getting less information, less resources, less preparation. And so you're having to deal with those disadvantages, and the two-year college system makes just a lot of sense for a lot of people, and so they've opted into that, which makes perfect sense. But for a lot of them as well, they're first generation, and so their parents are not as prepared with the information they should be providing their children. I read a statistic where coming out of high school, Hispanic students, know about the Pell Grant as an example. 41% know about the Pell Grant, whereas the typical non-Latino, it's in the 80s for everyone else. We our parents have not heard that these kinds of opportunities are available. And so the community college system makes perfect sense as a beginning point. However, I've also heard that there's many students have to take a remediation course or two to be able to bridge that gap and get back where they need to be. And then getting them to complete the two-year degree is important because we're not completing it at the same rate as others. How do we get them from the two-year degree to the four-year degree? How have you been able to do that within your system? What steps and measures have you taken?
Yeah, she makes some great points. When we talk about higher education, we talk about the demographic that we serve. Our demographic, as you just pointed out, very, very, very precisely, starts from a position that's behind. When you go to the elementary schools, you already know that if you're not doing well in fractions, you're going to have trouble when you get into, by third grade, you're going to be in trouble going forward. And, it's the same kind of thing for algebra, in eighth grade. So they're underprepared in a lot of different ways. Some of it's cultural, some of it is awareness. And I think there's a balance of it. Again, this notion of understanding what the possible is. Again, I was very fortunate in a lot of different ways, which I can describe later, that gave me an opportunity to catch up even when I was in high school, which typically is not the case in most of our the communities we serve. So as we go forward, we're saying how do we engage those students at an earlier time? So even as we are recruiting, both for two-year programs and for four-year programs, we reach down into the high schools. I mean, there's a new movement now that's really starting to take hold here in New Mexico. It's called early college high school. So you allow students to begin to take credits that are applicable to their two-year degree while they're still in high school. Now, those that are advancing quite rapidly, in some cases, can actually get an associate's degree along with their high school diploma, which is pretty. I mean, that really gives you a head start. Many others are taking bits and pieces, and they're starting that process. So reaching into the high school is one of those programs. The second is to make sure that we can give them the kind of resources and support through advising and mentoring. We have a thing called meta majors. What we don't want is students to come and take a bunch of classes and spend a lot of money that they don't have, to not be working toward a credential of some sort, something that they can take away with them that says, I have this competency, this capability. And you end up essentially wasting credits, if you will, if you're losing focus. And so, and that actually has implications for the things like Pell Grants and any kind of federal assistance, because you only have a certain amount. You only get a certain amount of that over time. And if you have too many credits, you can run out of that before you're finished with your degree. So we try to shorten the time that students have to get to a degree, but recognizing they're not yet ready to make a decision, we have a thing called meta majors. So it gives them an opportunity to take some classes that fit into several different categories that we help them determine are best suited to their personalities and their competencies and the way in which they want to ultimately benefit from an educational program. So those outreach programs are, the value is immeasurable. These things change lives with just someone taking the time to advise a student who is without really any way of understanding what the future can and should be. So there's a lot of programs that we're working on because we are trying to meet the students where they are, again, reaching into the high school and putting programs together that really help our Latino community.
So given you touched on a couple of different very important points there, and given the affordability factor, do you have a significant part-time population that is doing both, working and going to school, within your university system?
Sure. I mean, when you talk about our two-year programs, that primarily is the kind of way that students work their way through these
Right.
different programs, is they're working most of the time. We live down here very close to the border. Las Cruces is 40 miles from the border. I was on the board of directors of UTEP, the University of Texas El Paso, for many years, and Diana Natalicia was a wonderful friend, and so is their new president, Heather Wilson. Now, they are a commuter campus. I mean, 70% of the students that they have, I think, are working full-time, something like that. New Mexico State main campus, mostly a destination campus. It's a residential campus. We have students that live in our dorms, but our branch campuses primarily are those that are serving the communities and the type of student, both what we call traditional and non-traditional student, but students who need a different type of learning opportunities, and we need to be able to meet it on their terms. And so if they have to work in order to take classes at night, whatever that might be, we have to be able to accommodate that. So absolutely, those are big factors in how we address, again, the demographic that we serve.
Question regarding your current student population. You're a Hispanic serving institution, one of the larger recognized ones in the nation, which is extremely important as we mentioned, the population shift in this country, et cetera. Right. You've got, right now we're in the middle of a pandemic, and your students are challenged. They need to do everything, probably remotely. Yeah. Has that impacted, the ability of you or the institution, the university system, to reach the students effectively? And has this made a difference? And how have you responded as an institution?
Thank you, Ignacio, for that question. I got to tell you, that's one of the things I'm proudest of in terms of what we as an institution and a system have actually done in response to the crisis that obviously the pandemic has created. One thing, obviously, all higher ed was doing the same thing, is was saying, oh my goodness, how can we continue to have instruction even under the conditions that we're faced with today, which are worse than they were even last March, certainly in our part of the country. And so we recognize how difficult this is. First and foremost, you need basic, I'm going to call it infrastructure, but you need to be able to have connectivity to the internet, and so that you can actually do distance learning and distance instruction. And big challenge in New Mexico. We've got communities both in the northern side of the state and in the very southern part of the state where we have up to 50% of the households that have no connectivity of any kind to these various type of internet services. So what we did is as a consequence of that, and then of course other students were challenged and they didn't have devices to work on. So we did several things. One of which was, the first is we needed people to have the opportunity to connect. So because we're a land grant and a institution that has responsibilities across the entire state, we have an agricultural extension service and a cooperative extension service that is in every county of the state. So one of the things that we did is we put essentially external Wi-Fi opportunities in the parking lots of all of our extension offices across the state. Wow. So that students could, and in many cases, some students had to drive an hour to get to a parking lot so that they could take classes on their phone. I mean, that is the nature of the challenge that we were faced with. I mean, these are students who are anxious and eager to learn. They've got tremendous opportunity, tremendous talent, and yet we can't reach them because we don't have the infrastructure. So we did that initially, right from the beginning. The second thing that we did is we, at our Doña Ana County Community College, we bought 3,000 iPads, and we started putting those out to our students so that they could actually have some mobile device on which they could actually conduct their online learning. And so those were two major things that we've done, and of course our demographic is terribly challenged, so we have to do these things without trying to raise the costs that go with that. So these stimulus packages that the federal government provided were a lifeline. Were a lifeline to us, and we a pitch for more would be very appropriate. I'm saying just because I know how challenged our demographic is. But those are a couple of things.
Sure, right. That's great, and a great response, and being innovative to meet the students where they're at, and realize the circumstances under which they're now challenged. As we look at the world of work, because as an institution you prepare individuals to go out and meet that challenge in work and society. So much of what we hear today is that STEM is extremely important, and we do know that there's 3 times as many opportunities going forward, perhaps in STEM. There are millions of jobs that are vacant today. We talk to corporations, and they have a tremendous need related to STEM. But apart from STEM, because I'm sure that you're addressing that, in your institution.
Of course.
But apart from STEM, where are areas that students, because we have hundreds of students that are listening today, where are opportunities for them in the future that you're addressing as an institution?
Well, I'm a big fan of the Wayne Gretzky quote, which is "You skate to where the puck is," as opposed to trying to deal with where you are. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to anticipate where to go. Where is this new environment that we're dealing with, which no one has had? There's no playbook for how we deal with COVID, right? And we're looking. So how do we get to that next point? Well, and you talk about STEM. Obviously, look, I'm a engineer scientist. I have been all my life. It's rewarded me handsomely in many, many different ways. But what I've learned later in life is that it's not science, technology, engineering, math. It's science, technology, engineering, arts, math, humanities. It's all of those disciplines that do a couple of things for us. First of all, they teach us critical thinking skills, ability to be agile, ability to communicate, ability to be cooperative and collaborative. These are staples of what we need in the new marketplaces of the future. Now, clearly, we're going to be way more digital. So you got to have some basic fundamentals in digital. I don't care if you're in finance. I don't care if you're in medicine or if you're in any other discipline. You are going to need tools that we all have, which are just going to be everyday requirements. I mean, when I grew up, there was no internet. There was no cell phones. This was a very different environment. Today we need to keep up with technology and make sure that we've got that, recognizing that it's the basic foundation for all of the sectors in which we will operate. Now, what are the opportunities in New Mexico? I mean, obviously that's what we worry about, because those are the places where our students are going to get jobs. Most of the, our Latino community and the Native American community, they don't want to move away from home. They want to be able to grow in the communities in which they were born and be part of their communities. We need to be focused on not just educational system, the economic development opportunities where the jobs are created. Now, that being said, what are those skills that the jobs will require? Well, they're entrepreneurial skills. They're these kind of things that, frankly, between you and me, that Latinos are pretty good at. We're family, and we're all about putting together teams to do great things together. This is a cultural advantage that we have, I guess, that if you allow me to stereotype a little bit. But for the most part, I think what it is the discipline of understanding what the marketplace of the future needs. God knows we need teachers, we need healthcare workers, we need the people in the trades that are going to help with the manufacturing infrastructures of some of our critical infrastructures, whether it be oil and gas or water or health or national security. It's not just the elite scientists that are doing the great work in the laboratories. It's those that are deploying that and putting it into the marketplace. And there you need the entire ecosystem of all types of workers. And we're pretty good at being resourcewul and doing the things. My dad he had a third-grade education, and he was one of the best inventors I've ever seen. He was always coming up with great gadgets about this thing and that, the other, to help us with things. He actually, before GM, he labeled a thing that I always enjoy, a cup holder in our car back in the 1960s. He goes, "This is what GM forgot," and he got a cup holder. We had cup holders in our cars from the time I was a little kid. And my dad says, "Right. They didn't do that. We'll do it." So it was awesome, And I think we want to harness that capacity, that capability. So as much as I'm an advocate for STEM, I'm an advocate for STEAM, HA, whatever you want to call that label, that allows us to teach our students critical thinking skills and ways in which they can be productive in any kind of environment. And then you look at all of those opportunities, and again, in our state, we want to diversify our economy. We want to do a variety of things. There's all kinds of things, commercialization of space. There's all the AI and all of the new technologies that are coming their way. But it's, all of that's going to be part of the tool set that we use to do work in the future. And so we're looking to prepare our students for that future and not looking back as to what we've always done. Because anymore, people, our community doesn't have extra money to spend on an education that's not going to provide them value. And they need to be determined that value is worth that investment of time and money that they're willing to provide. So I just wanted to give a little pitch on the broader perspective of STEM, STEAM, STEAM HA.
Sure, sure. There's no question as the opportunities become available, the need is there, and as a community, it's our task to make sure that we're preparing individuals to meet the employment needs of the future. I guess one of the things that really stands out to me is what you've been able to accomplish, and you had challenges. You've mentioned your background. You didn't come from the greatest of beginnings, and you didn't have parents that were college graduates, et cetera. So what is the advice? Because you've got a roadmap. You've created one of success. What is some of the advice you can share with the thousands of students that need to hear? What ingredients? What did you do? What set you apart? You have a PhD in engineering from Stanford University, one of the best known institutions in the world, not even the United States, in the world. And you were able to do that. So what advice can you give, all of our young people listening today about what did you have to do? What roadmap did you create, and what made it possible for you?
Yeah, first of all, I had good family support, so that was never a barrier to me. Family support, my mom was always, telling me that, I should get my sleep instead of staying up studying kind of things, because she was, no, go, it's okay, Mijito, we're fine, we don't have to stay up all night. And I was always driven and motivated in many respects. But the thing that probably launched, my abilities, if you will, to begin to engage in both my educational journey as well as my professional journey, is more of really what I like to call having the help of many people that created the environment that allowed me to be successful. Now, some of it is internal drive. You've got to have that. But the other piece of it is understanding what is possible. I like to say, let's always explore what is the art of the possible. And so there's a bit of it that speaks to risk-taking and getting outside of your comfort zone and trying something that you don't have any idea if that's going to be successful or what. But that part of of your personal, I think, approach and attitude toward things like education and the value that it brings is to begin that process of exploring options. In today's environment, you've got the internet, you've got a number of other tools that we never had as students many years ago. Like literally 50 years ago is when I was entering New Mexico State University, and so it was a very different environment. It's a different environment today because I think there are more tools, but some of the fundamentals are the same, and it really has to do with seek out mentors, seek out people who can give you advice, seek out people who you look up to because of the journeys that they've been through, and they will fill your ear with all kinds of barriers that they've overcome. And so getting that context about what is the art of the possible, I mean, part of the reason that I'm really excited about getting this chance to share with you, Ignacio, is that, I see the charter of SER. You guys do a wonderful job of educating and connecting and helping Latino students understand, with role models and others, what the art of the possible is. And then with that communication of this is how that might apply in my life. They can begin to connect those dots. And, again, being out of your comfort zone is being something that has always, I think, excited me, encouraged me. My adrenaline gets flowing, even though I have no clue what I'm doing, is where I'm going and what that's going to end up like. You take a few false steps and you take a few branches and you go, that didn't work so much. And then you go back and you do some other things. But always moving forward, always progressing, always looking, what's the next opportunity? Now, I will say, it's important you got to do the work. So I like the AIMS model.
Right.
I'm on several boards. It's awareness, inspiration, motivation, and skills. AIMS, right? Awareness, inspiration, motivation, and skill. And that last piece, that skill part, is to gain a competency. Gain whether you're working in the automotive profession and you're the expert robotic welder in the world, or whether you are in the medicine and you are a clinical hygienist or whatever. Whatever your endeavor is, be the very best at it. Do the very best that you can. I've been encouraged by mentors my whole life And I had one mentor that told me when I was starting to make presentations, I was scared to death to talk in front of people, and it was always a nervous thing to do. And I learned that skill over many years. But another mentor told me, he said, you know, every time you give a presentation like you're interviewing for a job. In other words, take it seriously. Put your best foot forward.
Right.
That will ultimately begin to pay dividends in lots of different ways that are intangible. So anyway, those are a few thoughts.
Very good. Great advice, great counsel. Thank you, Dr. Arvizu. We've got a couple more questions. One, you have been the chancellor, the head of the entire New Mexico State University system since June of 2018. What have you done as the person that's in charge of the entire system? What's your vision? What's your mission? What changes have you made within the university that you can share with us?
Sure, and thanks for that question. That's the answer I live on a daily basis. So, you know, what I've learned in my many years of professional work, at the national labs and the private sector where I've worked before, is that you need a North Star. You need a guiding light. You need to know which direction you're going. So first and foremost, you need a strategy. You need a plan. And I'm a big proponent of you don't really, and a lot of people put together strategic plans. That's not the issue. The issue is implementing a strategic plan. It's really hard sometimes to actually do it. It's great. It's one thing to say it, put it in a binder, put it on a shelf. Right. It's another thing to actually do it. So one of the things that I came to this institution with is, first of all, this is my alma mater, so I'm particularly fond and passionate about making sure that it's on the right track. And the last decade or more have been really hard on a lot of institutions in higher ed across the country. In New Mexico, no different. We had all the financial crisis of before, and now this new financial crisis. But there's no substitute for having a strategy and knowing which direction you're headed. So the very first thing that my team and I put together was essentially a strategy. We have 4 primary goals: student success, elevating research, amplifying our outreach efforts, which is part of our land-grant mission, and then having a robust university system that works best for everybody. And so along those 4 goals, we have what we call KPIs, key performance indicators. We have objectives, we have goals. And again, you don't know where you are and you don't know where you're going if you can't measure it and then be able to track progress against it. So we set goals, substantial goals. We had been in decline in enrollment, so we said, okay, we're going to start growing. We had been declining in research expenditures, and think about that as just the amount of research that we do, and then we needed to turn that around. So in each one of these goals, we put teams together and we said, okay, here are the objectives, here are the things we're going to be measured by and we're going to hold ourselves accountable to. We started that 2 years ago, okay? And boy, I'll tell you, I am so glad that we were able to do that, because now that COVID has hit, what we find is that strategy not only is still relevant, but we got to get there faster than we thought we could, all right? So that has made us really focused on how do we deal with this. Now, the COVID is disrupted all of our lives. Let me just not minimize the impact. Huge impact. Higher ed across the nation needs to reinvent itself, needs to reimagine itself, I like to say, okay? And we're trying to do that too in our system. We're trying to reimagine how we work. What is it that we can do? One of the first things that I've done, and obviously states are strapped for financial resources, and as a consequence of that, we get a generous amount of support from the legislature in New Mexico, because we are a relatively poor state, and they have supported higher ed at levels that are much higher than most other states. It's essential for our existence. But even that is now starting to diminish and dwindle over time. I don't see that trend changing anytime soon, and so we recognize we've got to pivot and make sure that we're able to go and attract other resources that can complement the resources that we get from the state. That's our future. That's where we got to go. How do we do that? Well, we got to be competitive. We got to be to our students and bring those students in so they want to be at our institution. And we have to ultimately bring in new revenues through federal government grants, through research, the things that we do. And so we're looking at all hands on deck. We're moving in a particular direction. one of the things that I've moved on right now is I recognize how important economic development is in our state. We need to diversify our economy.
Right.
We are a state that lives and dies with oil and gas. When oil and gas is not doing well, our state coffers are empty, and in some cases even below empty. But we have to do budget cuts. So we're in the process right now of cutting the budgets to higher ed, and frankly across all of the agencies in New Mexico. So how do we accommodate that? Well, we are not going to stop from progressing. We're going to continue to improve in our services, and we're going to meet the objectives of our strategy, even though they're growth in an environment where everybody's cutting budgets. And we see pathways to do that by becoming more efficient, by leveraging and creating synergies, and doing things in ways that we need to really perform well. Economic development being one of those. So we're taking the main campus entrepreneurial services of all kinds, exporting those to all of our community branch colleges, so that we can help those communities create jobs that those students that will be going to school there can participate in. So essentially, we begin to create an economic engine at the local levels, not just having our students be educated and have to go someplace else to get a job. So we're looking at this full spectrum. This has got to be, all hands on deck, and the entire state's got to be about this. And we hope that our vision for where we're going with New Mexico State University is something that will be a leadership opportunity for us in the state and hopefully across the country.
Wonderful. And there's no question that education has to be reimagined, and there's going to be some consolidation of institutions as we move forward, and it's got to be reconfigured to meet the demand for the future as we go forward. Cost, et cetera, affordability, especially in our community. That's right. Affordability is one of those factors, and so there's no question that has to come into play.
That's
before
a great.
We end.
Yeah, I just want to add one more point
No,
because
it's
really important. And that one more point is, you said affordability. One of the things that we have prided ourselves in is we give a generous amount of financial aid. And the reason is our demographic needs it. It's required. So we look at our cost to the student. How much does the student have to pay out of their pocket? It's not just tuition and fees. It's books and supplies. And in our case, it's room and board as well. All of those are sticker price. And we provide enough institutional support so that the out-of-pocket expenses to students coming to NMSU are best in our region. So they're the lowest cost in our region for a high-quality education. So we're really, really proud of that, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that. So thank you for that opportunity.
Good. Great to hear, by the way, and that you're addressing that head on. That's so important. Yeah. Before we end, I want to get back to you and your personal life and your journey. You indicated you had no idea that one day you would be sitting in the seat you're sitting in today. As growing up, you probably didn't imagine that, didn't think about it. It wasn't part of your reality back then. What is it that, or what's the best advice you can give, someone? What's the biggest obstacle you had to overcome to make yourself understand and realize this is really something that I can do? Because you weren't hearing Dr. Dan Arvizu today like we're hearing back then. You had to do it in a different way. But what's the best advice you can give our young people about, how they can create that path for themselves? And what did you have to overcome that could have maybe tilted you the other way, that changed your life?
Oh, I can't tell you how many times I was scared to death about my next step. I had to overcome something that probably is pretty common to many other, members of underrepresented groups, no matter what flavor they are, Hispanic particular for me, is overcoming our own fears. I look around and I see people that are so brilliant, so smart, and I'm thinking, man, I wished I was as smart as them. I wished I had that talent, because I have my own self-doubts. It was really interesting. I was, I think in my background you'll see I was appointed to the National Science Board, which is one of the most prestigious, honors that anyone can have. Appointed first by President Bush and then reappointed by President Obama. And here I am, and it's a 24-member board that oversees the National Science Foundation that funds much of, university research across the country. So I'm sitting in this room, and first of all, pinching myself that I'm even in the room. And I'm looking around this table and I'm thinking, my goodness, everyone here is capable of winning a Nobel Prize, except me.
Right.
I'm thinking, and I'm in awe of all these people. They're wonderful, right? And as time would have it, I got more comfortable in being able to converse. My domain, expertise is energy, and that's what I've been in most of my career. But when I got into that type of a setting, what became clear is that it wasn't who was the smartest in the room. It was the one person who could make the most impact in terms of bringing everyone together. And it turned out that my social skills, skills of understanding and listening and connecting dots and synthesis, were actually a valuable contribution to these incredibly brilliant people. And so as a consequence of that, they vote, all of those 24 people voted me as the chair of this board. And I still don't understand how that happened, and I still don't think I'm worthy. And so it was extremely gratifying to see that I had something of value that they all could embrace, and that I actually provided something that was of significance to the group. I was then meeting with the chair of the House Science Committee at the time in the House at the federal level, and we were talking about it, and I invited him to come and talk to our group. And we were sitting there, having donuts, kind of watching the people, and before we got ready to go, and he goes, "How do you manage these people?" I said, he was a representative. I said, and he was a chairman, so I called him Mr. Chairman. I said, Mr. Chairman, one thing I know about this is that everybody in this entire room is smarter than me. And it doesn't really matter because we come at this with a very, very different kind of perspective. Those qualities that we present are just as valuable as the people with the incredible gray matter that allow them to be, Nobel Prize winners.
Right.
I think don't sell yourself short. There are so many things you can accomplish, and I would have never told you that would have been something that I could have actually aspired to. When I was a little boy, my dad was a manager of a shoe store, and I used to sell shoes with him. And he said to me, I told my dad, I said, "Dad, I don't like this kind of work. I hate being a salesman. I don't like this." And I said, "I'll never be a salesman." And as I reflect back on my life, that's exactly what I am. I'm a salesman, and I learned those as a small child, working for my dad selling shoes. So that to me is the place where I come full circle. So thank you for the opportunity to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I might mention that you were elected the chair on 2 different occasions, if I recall. And put into context, the size of the budget that you were responsible for as a board was $8.5 billion. So this is not a small, organization by any stretch of the means. So it was an extremely important position. You've done it. You come from very humble beginnings, and you were able to do that because you convinced yourself and you thought the right way, and you have the right family background, and the skill set was always there. It needed to come out. Your story has been inspiring. It's truly an honor to have you with us here to share your story with everyone, and let them know that you are restricted by your own mind. And if you look about and look at anyone that's been successful, you can be successful as well. It's a question of whether you are willing to take the time, the effort to put into it and make something of yourself. But we have a tremendous example like you. You're in charge of an entire university system in the state of New Mexico, and it's an honor to have you with us again at our conference. Thank you for taking the time. It's been a pleasure to have you here with us today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, President Salazar. Thank you very much.
And Melissa, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you.